Hello and welcome to the Movie Bunker podcast. Little extra episode, isn't it, Chris?
It is indeed a bonus popping one.
A bonus popping one?
I meant to say pop-in one.
Ah. How are you, Chris?
I'm very well. It's a nice evening, Saturday night. I've had a really unstressful day and relaxing, and thought we could have a chat.
Yeah, so you pulled me in here. Why have you pulled me in here, Chris? Who have you been speaking to?
Well, the Overlord sent me a message via the tube. I had spoken to Helen O'Hara again from Empire Podcast, and she's a movie journalist, as you all know. So she was hoodwinked into coming onto the show again. So they wanted it put out basically as soon as possible. And so you're here, and
I'm here.
So am I, and we're going to talk about that, and then we're going to do a top 5. And it's a sad day.
It is a sad day because it is going to be our last top 5. But stay tuned to the end because it's going to be replaced by a exciting new featurette.
Yeah, a new feature. It's new feature time.
Pour this interview into my ears, Chris. Pour it in.
Yeah, so Helen came in and we spoke about her movie Guilty Pleasure, which was 2005's Constantine, starring the fantastically amazing Keanu Reeves and Rachel Weisz. But it had a really mixed review when it came out, or some quite critically panned, especially on Rotten Tomatoes. But anyway, hear for yourself. Here's the interview. Hello and welcome to the Movie Bunker podcast. And it's me, Chris. I'm delighted to be joined by Helen O'Hara, who's been hoodwinked into delving into the bunker again.
Hello, how are you doing?
I'm very well, thank you. So the Overlords got in touch and said, look, your time is due for another slot on the bunker.
Yeah, that's it. I had no choice. What could I do?
Film choice today is one of your kind of another guilty pleasure or a poorly rated film that you want to sing the praises of?
I'd say the latter. I have no guilt about liking Constantine at all.
What if I told you that God and the devil made a wager for the souls of all mankind? No direct contact with humans, that would be the rule. Just influence. See who would win.
Demons stay in hell, angels in heaven.
They call it the balance.
I need to see what you see.
You do this, there's no turning back. You see them. They see you. Understand? Oh, God. Go to hell.
It was a controversial film in some ways when it first came out, and I remember going to see it with a couple of colleagues from Empire, and I think 2 of us really liked it.
Yeah.
And the one who was actually writing the review was not so keen. I think it gets a lot of things right, so I'm willing to kind of forgive the things that are not so great about it.
Yeah, it certainly is kind of divisive in a way. I mean, it got better reviews on IMDb because it came out like a 7 out of 10, but on Rotten Tomatoes, it's 40%, which is quite low. Obviously, while we're reviewing it. And it came out, 2005, directed by Francis Lawrence, who's pretty much gone on to sort of direct everything that Jennifer Lawrence has been in. Are they related?
No relation. But he was brought into the Hunger Games sequels, if memory serves, and then they just clearly got on really well. I think did he do 3 out of 4 Hunger Games? He certainly did the last 2.
Did he do He did Red Sparrow, I think, as well.
He did Red Sparrow as well, yeah, which I didn't like. But no, I think he has a real eye, and especially in this film, I think he just has a real sense of what works and how it needs to look, and it's actually a very visually impressive film. I think even if you're not a fan of all the elements of it, I think there are images in this film that actually really stay with you, and that's one of the many reasons I like it.
Lots of things work, I think, in terms of, as you say, the tone and the palette, and you might have to explain to me because I'm not a DC person, but this is a DC thing, isn't it, this character?
Yeah, it is. It's not quite DC. It's more, I think it's Vertigo originally. And so that was that's not quite, do you know what I mean? It's owned by DC, but it's not quite the same. It's not quite the same kind of tone or quite the same kind of sense. You know, the cover of the first issue was a Dave McKean cover, who drew the covers of the Sandman issues. So it was always a bit kind of offbeat, a bit cooler. I mean, this is a character created by Alan Moore, so you know it's going to be a little bit different. He's kind of a magician, but he's kind of a punk street magician in some ways, but a magician in the sense of true magic, not in the sense of sleight of hand. He turns up actually in Neil Gaiman's Sandman series as well, and then finally got his own title after being introduced in Swamp Thing, if memory serves. He's a really cool character and a really interesting character, but he is a blonde Liverpudlian. So casting Keanu Reeves and setting it in LA immediately lost you about 50% of Constantine fans.
Yeah, but what do you think of the casting then, and his sort of turn as Constantine in terms of what you already know of the character?
Yeah, I think it's different from the comic book version, which you will see much more clearly in the TV show version. But I mean, I'm a Keanu Reeves fan, and so I love him. I think he's actually a really good fit for this. He's being much more of an asshole than usual.
Yes.
Frankly.
One of my notes, I wrote down that he's extremely pushy in this film when it comes to all the characters.
Yeah, I mean, not pushy in a sort of, sexist way or anything like that, but just really just does not give a damn about anyone else.
Yeah.
Has to be really persuaded to care about anyone, and is aggressively has a bad attitude, Yeah, he's kind of a bit of a dick in this. But again, that's more of a performance than people give Keanu credit for, I think, or we're certainly giving him credit for at the time. But it does fit the character, because Constantine is not a simple hero. He's always been a little bit in a grey area. He did slightly dodgy things in the pursuit of hopefully better outcomes. So there's a lot of trickery in his stories. He usually outthinks his opponents rather than just having bigger guns or whatever, whether literally or sort of supernaturally speaking.
He's stuck in limbo, isn't he, essentially? He was born able to see the demons that walk among us. That's the kind of the shtick of this movie, isn't it? Heaven and hell exist and kind of they're on earth sorting us out on the sly.
Yeah, essentially, heaven and hell exist. They can't interfere directly, but their half-breed offspring can.
Yeah.
Don't ask me how the half-breeds got there in the first place, because that would seem like direct action, but hey-ho. And so they try to manipulate us and on behalf of heaven and hell. So you've got angels and demons kind of fighting it out on the mortal plane. And essentially Constantine, when he needs to, fighting both sides. This is kind of taken from the Garth Ennis run of the comics, which was very, very popular. And it's basically has the idea that Constantine has lung cancer and is desperate to try to find a way to save himself. So that's kind of where we are in the early part of this film, where he is preoccupied with this fatal disease and is trying to find a way out of going to hell, because he's been there already and he knows it ain't good. And in the middle of this, you get Rachel Weisz's characters, one of whom is a twin who kills herself, and the other one is a twin looking for answers as to why. And he's just not interested because he's got other things to think about.
Keanu Reeves, bless him. I don't know anybody who doesn't like Keanu, and he's a fantastic man as well as actor, and just an all-round gentleman. He can't cough act, I don't think. His coughing. I don't know, there's a special thing you have to do or a course you need to go on to do that. I'll get that to specialise in coughing. But I found that quite bizarre.
I had never noticed that. I did not particularly have a problem with his coughing. Oh dear.
I think now I've pointed out, Helen, you might not see it the same. But he had the constant supply of tissues or hankies, and his blood was like jelly. It was like a strawberry jam, as opposed to like the thick, dark blood you get usually. It was just a small thing, and I think once I saw it, it kind of jarred on me. It's a silly small hill to die on, I guess, in terms of coughing. We touched on cast as well with Rachel Weisz. So I think this film has got this 2005's hit list, isn't it, really? With the exception of Gavin Rossdale from Bush.
Who just turns up.
Yeah, he does his best, but he's not the greatest, most charismatic of actors, I don't think.
He doesn't have to do very much. He just has to glower in a very good suit.
He does pull the suit off very well. But we've got a very young Shia LaBeouf doing very much a Shia LaBeouf.
I think that was a thing that people generally hated about the film, and it certainly isn't my favorite aspect of it. I think if you actually stay through the end credits, they're going for something with that.
Yeah.
But perhaps it wasn't the best decision. I'm not sure he needed a child sidekick really to talk to, especially since Shia LaBeouf played a very similar role in I, Robot the same year, which probably didn't help either.
Judging by what I read on IMDb, which is obviously all true, that it was Will Smith that had some clout in terms of getting him this role. But it's kind of he's a little bit like it's like an Indiana Jones type sidekick, but without the charisma. And he's a taxi driver, or is his kind of his chauffeur, his driver, learning the ropes sort of thing, isn't he?
Yeah, I think that's it. It's almost like an apprentice is the idea, and he kind of keeps at Constantine for lessons in how to do this stuff. You know, not entirely convinced by. So yeah, but so they're good. You've got Djimon Hounsou in there as well as a sort of witch doctor. Voodoo man.
Yeah, he's really good. He stands out. Yeah. As so does Pruitt Taylor Vince, who I've seen in loads of stuff, and he looks so upset all the time.
Yes, he does. Not without reason, in fairness.
And Tilda Swinton.
Yeah, no, these are the two best pieces of casting. We're going into spoiler territory very much here. But Tilda Swinton and Peter Stormare are just fantastic casting in this film. Tilda Swinton, first of all, as an androgynous Angel Gabriel, like sold. Where do I sign up? Come on, that's perfect. If you have Tilda Swinton and she's not playing someone faintly otherworldly, I feel like you're wasting our time, you know. And this film does not waste our time. She is perfect in that role, and I'm sure, yes, it absolutely builds on her casting in Orlando with that sort of androgyny, but I don't care if they weren't the first to do it. They do it, and that's what matters. I think she's great. And then Peter Stormare is just this incredibly greasy devil, is again just wonderful.
I think the way that he enters the scene is fantastic. Kind of like an oily birth from the top of the screen. You see his feet, his bare feet first, his white suit, and a lot of tar. And it's amazing. He's probably one of the best, I guess, Satan acting performances I've ever seen. And he should only play, or should be the only person that plays the devil in any future film, in my opinion. I
kind of feel the same way, because he turns up at the very end of the film. It's kind of like John Hurt at the end of History of Violence. He just turns up for this one amazing scene, and it's amazing. But it's just that little tiny bit, but it's so well done.
Lou, what took you so long?
Hello, John. John, hello. You're the one soul I would come up here to collect myself.
So I've heard. You mind?
Oh, go right ahead. I've got stock.
Coffin nail.
Very fitting, John. And now when you cut too deep, you cut the tendons. Finger movement goes out the window. Let me help you. See? Sonny, I've got a whole theme park full of red delights for you.
Aren't you a peach?
I didn't think you would make the same mistake twice. And you didn't. Did you?
So it's a family.
Family's doing just fine. Busy. Need a vacation.
Word is that kid of yours is a chip off the old block.
Well, one does what one can.
He's in the other room.
Boys will be boys.
With Gabriel.
No accounting for taste, really.
They have the spear of destiny.
They have the spear of destiny. Or is it another one of your cons? Look for yourself.
There's this really good beat as well in the way that Constantine kind of tricks him into, supporting him or getting to the, I guess, what would they call it, the end game in terms of his mission, saving Rachel Weisz's character and obviously getting revenge on Tilda Swinton as Gabriel as well. And that brilliant scene between the two of them together where they, Angel Gabriel's, what's she doing? Kind of like going behind Satan's back in a way to try and, for her own needs and her own wants to sort of rule heaven and earth and hell, I guess, at once. Yeah,
to provoke the war between heaven and hell that she thinks is predestined.
That's the one. You got there a lot quicker than I did. But I liked the little bits of Gabriel's costume, which or kind of get up was really cool. She had all those like hospital tags, like loads of hospital tags around her or on her arms, which I thought was a really cool detail. Which was just she's not dressed in robes as such, but it's kind of combat trousers, white combat trousers, a grey vest top, and the wings coming out. It's pretty cool.
And the vest top is, if I remember correctly, sort of laced up. It's almost there's a hint of straitjacket, I think, about it.
Yeah.
Some kind of confinement and stuff, which again is really good. Yeah, it's a fantastic look for both of them. Having Satan turn up in a white suit, again, sold perfect, of course.
There's a couple of really good tropes. Recently with the podcast, we've kind of been delving into a lot of this kind of genre. So we've done I, Frankenstein and Van Helsing, Dracula 2000, lots of similar sort of stuff with a lot of like gothic storytelling involved. And one thing, even Ghost Rider, the Nicolas Cage one, these movies have got very similar beats, haven't they? So there's the savant kind of character, or the kind of Q, like Max Baker plays the B-man, who's Constantine's aide in terms of he has the book which explains the plot points, which all these films have. If you're not following, here's where we are, last third of the film. This is where we're going. If you didn't understand, we're going to lay it all out for you now with pictures as well. So just to make it even easier for you. And he can create weapons, or he's got his hands on potions or spells. And he's in a man cave, which is full of jars and things. So that's very similar. And Angels and Demons and the gothic kind of Men in Blackness about it, because it's got that kind of angle, hasn't it?
It does. I think there's a lot of. I think that's very hard to get past in kind of fantasy movies, whether fantasy or this kind of urban fantasy. You've always got to explain what the rules are and how far you can go and what you can't do, and it's really hard to do elegantly. If you've got something like the Marvel Cinematic Universe at this point, they can kind of skip a lot of that stuff because we've got 23 films. We kind of know how this works, but if you're a standalone movie, I don't know how you entirely get around that. Somebody's going to have to explain what you can and can't do, because otherwise it's chaos, and you just have the audience unable to suspend disbelief because they're just sitting there going, well, why doesn't he just, I don't know, why doesn't he just go to hell and kill the devil himself?
Yeah.
We need to know why. We need to understand that,
And the human characters that are in these stories that are going along with these like fantastical characters, any normal situation, if this was true, they would be going mad out of their minds, because it was too much to take on board for any normal human being. But that kind of savant, kind of calm, collective explaining of the situation just seems to bridge that gap for us, doesn't it? I think in terms of movie storytelling.
Yeah, it's always useful to have somebody there who doesn't know what's going on, because it gives the lead a chance to explain it, or sometimes a sidekick, depending on the setup. But yeah, you need them to be. Well, some of them do go a bit crazy, don't they? Some of them go a bit more panicky than others. The example that comes to mind is a really bad one, actually, because it doesn't quite fit the trope. But it's Ruby Rhod in The Fifth Element, just completely screaming as everything goes crazy around him. There are a few characters who do that, at least for a couple of scenes, but the problem is they need to stay coherent enough to have things explained to them. So they can't be reduced to gibbering idiocy. They have to be at most in shock and not really reacting emotionally, I think.
I think Rachel Weisz does that perfectly. She's great, and one of my favorite characters actors as well as Keanu Reeves. So the casting of those two main leads is fantastic and brilliant. What do you think kind of the reason is this film didn't critically do as well as it may have done or hoped to have done?
Yeah, I think there's a few reasons. I think first of all, if you abandon key elements of the comic, so being a blonde Liverpudlian, for example, being set in I think London in the comics for the most part, but certainly the UK in favor of LA, you kind of set yourself up for a bit of a war from the fans, and that can be really, really dangerous. I think it's quite a cool idea here because I feel like LA is, has that whole noire association, that kind of lone detective, maverick kind of feel. So I actually think it works really well, but I think that because I wasn't a huge fan of these comics at the time this came out, I'd only read a few of them and I wasn't wed to that character. So I think with any superhero movie, if you move away from the character and the rules that people love, you are in for a kicking from somebody at least. Now, I don't think that the film critics who didn't like this film were particular fans of the comics. I think most of them probably had never read them. But I think film critics, some of what you're saying, about this kind of overfamiliarity of these tropes already in 2005, I think was a part of it. And I think the tone of this one is a bit more self-serious than they were maybe willing to allow, and a bit more downbeat ultimately, and it's quite gloomy and quite dark in some ways. And I think they were willing to forgive more if you gave them a few more laughs. There are some laughs in this. Constantine staring deep into the eyes of a cat with his feet in a bath of water. That's weird,
Because cats are half in and half out of hell, and aren't they? That was the good
exactly. So I think that is quite a funny image, and I'm pretty sure it's deliberately funny, but I don't think that every critic would agree with me on that. Yeah,
it takes itself very seriously. I think if we did have a bit less of the movie as well, because it is quite long, maybe half an hour could have been done with shaving off. And have a bit more of the humor in the buddy character, because Shia LaBeouf it was hot property potentially, or on his way up certainly, and
it's. I mean, there's some problems there because I think you could have done without him and just had Angela, Rachel Weisz's character. But she's in mourning, so she's not going to be a hell of a lot of fun, and so I think they thought, well, we need Shia LaBeouf for a bit of fun and a bit of lightness, but then you've got the annoying child sidekick. So there's no easy way to win there, I think. And I think they've maybe wrote themselves into that corner a little bit, because we have seen it in other films, these characters who are most recently in, can I say this, Spider-Man Far From Home? But there's a character there who's in mourning, but he's also really funny.
Yeah.
And he's still pretty much cracking wise the whole time. So does that take away from the idea that he is, suffering a loss?
Did they make these films always with the intention to have a follow-up potentially?
I think at that point in Hollywood, they were more making them with a hope of a follow-up. I don't think in 2005 you necessarily went in going, here is my 3-film arc, which I think some people do now, and I don't think it was quite as common then. So I think they were certainly open to it. I'm sure the studio would have loved for it to be a franchise, and I'm sure that whatever contract that Keanu Reeves and Rachel Weisz signed certainly had an option at the very least for more movies. But no, I don't think they would have gone in kind of assuming that or planning for that in the way that a lot of films do nowadays.
So I think, Constantine deserves to be seen. I think. Would you agree? It's not a stinker by any means, is it?
No, absolutely not. I think it absolutely deserves to be seen. I think there's great ideas in it. The depiction of hell as a sort of almost nuclear ruined version of our own world, with sort of the wind howling and no water anywhere. It's really compelling. The demons are properly horrible and terrifying, slightly Hieronymus Bosch-y kind of creatures. Constantine's weapons to fight these things are weird and bizarre and great. And you've got Tilda Swinton and Peter Stormare as heaven and hell respectively. So happy days.
Yeah, look at the cast. Yeah, look at the feel and the gothicness of it, and just switch it. No, don't switch off, because you'll lose a lot of the plot. But you're going to expect later. Yeah, by all means, no, actually, don't switch off, because it's really important that you stay on with this one. But yeah, I agree. I think this is definitely not a bunker movie. Anyway, you get a free pass anyway, because you're a special guest. So yeah, that's just,
thank you.
We never let our films go in the bunker for the guests. So we've got a little bit of fatigue with these kind of dark, dreary movies. But what else have we got? We did Happy Time Murders last episode, and that was different. That's nothing like this. It's completely different.
Both LA detective stories, I guess.
Yes, that was the thing. Yeah, but you could have this movie done with puppets. It would probably elevate it slightly, maybe, even if they did the voices.
Again, they kind of did that with an episode of Angel. I mean, LA detective, and got turned into a Muppet that one time, and it was brilliant.
Puppets and Demons. That's what it'd be called.
I would watch that.
Yeah. Thanks so much again for coming on and defending the honour of this pretty epic movie. I'll have to agree with you. It's definitely one to stay. Thanks again, and take care.
Pleasure.
If we were to draw a graph of my process, of my method, something like this: Sir Ian, action. Wizard, you shall not pass. Cut. Sir Ian.
That was good. I liked that. I enjoyed that interview.
Yeah,
I kind of agree. I think Constantine's one of my little guilty pleasures. This is one of those sort of shit films that when you first watched it, because of hype and expectation, you were probably slightly disappointed. But then over time, you've kind of mellowed. It's like really sorted crisps. It's like, when you first had them as a child, you're like, well, okay, they're fine, but it's no prawn cocktail.
No, that's a good comparison, yeah.
Yeah, and then later on, you kind of go, oh, actually, I appreciate this nutty, potatoey flavour.
Anyway, the last ever top 5 is upon you. So you challenged me to find 5 standalone films for Star Wars characters. Basically, that was it.
Trips off the tongue, doesn't it? I mean, I keep trying to think of a more succinct way of saying it, but it's that, and I don't think there's a more succinct way of saying it. It's just,
I love Star Wars, and I know you do too, but I'm a massive Star Wars fan, and this was quite heaven. But then it was very difficult to pick 5 out. Okay,
well, I can't wait any longer, Chris. Is there a particular order, or is it just?
There is an order.
Ooh.
So thank you very much. So number 5, we've got Cornelius Evazan and Ponda Baba. So I've kind of cheated. It's not just a standalone for one character. It's kind of a double act, duo, if you like. So you may not know these two by their names, but they were in Rogue One and A New Hope, and they're a murderous duo created. But the very first time we saw them, basically they were in the cantina in episode 1, A New Hope, and we see the effects of the lightsaber for the very first time.
Yes, this is the walrus guy and the pig face man, right?
That's correct. He sacrificed his arm for us to see an iconic moment on screen. And we thank him for that and his ugly companion. But this would be a kind of buddy road movie with a twist, because if they have, with every Star Wars character, even if they're a member of if they're just like in the bar having a drink, they've got a rich backstory. Okay, so you can thumb through any kind, like I say, the encyclopedia, and learn all about the little bat guy's past. But these two, Cornelius Everson is he is a doctor or a surgeon, and he's got his buddy is Ponda Baba. He's basically his assistant. They go around basically.
Well, that's canon. That's
yes. They kind of do dirty stuff like backstreet surgeons. So it's kind of got a little bit of a vibe of Birkenhair and Sweeney Todd. So it could be a really dark, even potentially could be a musical. But Ponda Baba just sounds like a walrus. My friend doesn't like you. I don't like you either. So, but yeah, you can imagine it would be like a really sort of horrible, grotesque kind of horror in a way of these guys harvesting parts and doing dirty deeds in the back streets.
It could even be like a black comedy where it, like, at every turn shit goes wrong for them, kind of.
Yeah. And what a great double act. One that we can understand and one that we can't, potentially not even give them subtitles.
Wow, I did not know he was a surgeon. I wouldn't have pegged it. I mean, he looks dirty. I mean,
yeah. Google that one, bad boy.
Wow.
So what do you think? Number 5, good?
Great start. Yeah, I would watch the shit out of that.
Okay, number 4. You ready for this?
I'm ready.
This is the character. His name is Paudok Draba Takat Sap Direkti Nik Kivef Nik Nevasaf Lekek aka Pau. And he was in Rogue One. Now, this guy, you would remember him as one of the only non-human sort of Rogue One characters. His name is a mouthful, but he's a little guy with a massive mouth. And he is one of the team that does the assault on Scarif at the very beginning. At the end of the film. Yeah. Do you know who I mean?
Yes, I do.
He shouts really loud and goes, "Ah!" That's all he does, basically. But he looks so cool. He's got like a little kind of soft helmet on, big gun, and runs around with the human sort of rebels on Scarif. Him and the monkey dude, who are the only kind of real couple of aliens they used in the kind of the goodies, if you like, in Rogue One, were really, really underused, and was really disappointed because it's not a lot of the promo shots that were used for when Rogue One was coming out. They were kind of front and center, but they were kind of really just background characters and had a few scenes right at the end when they were doing the invasion. And
so just one of those characters that looked cool, so they used them for posters and promos, and then had no real part.
But so for him, I think he deserves a standalone film just for the fact that he looks bloody cool and he was underused in Rogue One. But this would be like a really gritty, Full Metal Jacket kind of war movie. So all the kind of soldiers and the rebels that were used on that final battle on Scarif in Rogue One were probably all hardened soldiers at one point, or mercenaries. You know, they were the bad bunch, kind of like a Dirty Dozen type affair, which is kind of the movie was pitched as in some ways. But they could have a backstory of those guys and have Powell being like front and center and leading the film. Not necessarily speaking English as well. We could have him subtitled.
It'd be really cool to see sort of like you say, Full Metal Jacket, kind of them in the boot camp and through their first few forays with the rebellion. No, like that.
Are we ready for number 3?
Oh, you didn't get lost. You disappoint me, Chris. Normally around here,
I know what I'm doing. I know what I'm doing. I've written it down. So number 3 is the GNK power droid, commonly known as the Gonk droid. Gonk, Gonk. So you see him Sandcrawler, and you see him in all the films. They always put one in a little homage to the Gonk droid in the background. So he's basically a walking trash can on legs, but he basically provides power. He's like a walking power unit. Do you know the guy I mean?
Yeah. Big like square thing.
He's a big square with like I don't know, tubes for legs with these big metal.
Yeah, they did the sort of cheap thing where they put sort of like air duct.
That's right.
So you couldn't see like human legs walking, but it's got a very fluid walking motion despite it being a Gonk droid.
This would be a kind of silent movie or a love story, a bit like WALL-E, and we would be seeing almost like the trilogy unfolding, all these characters in his eyes. So he would be providing power to, I don't know, the pod race, or maybe in the rebellion camp on Yavin. He'd be sort of there in the background seeing all these big stuff happening, but he'd be secretly falling in love with another power droid or something, you know, like a power unit in the corner, and it'd be him trying to woo them with his...
Like a Forrest Dunk.
Yeah. So you know WALL-E did so much with very little, and it was all in the eyes and the way he was.
That's some of the. I mean, WALL-E's some of what, like the opening 20-30 minutes of that is some of the finest filmmaking that you'll see, because there's nothing in it. You know, there's no words, there's no communication verbally, and it's amazing.
I just love to see a gonk droid making out with another gonk droid in some weird, perverted way.
See, I'm sold just because I said Forrest Gump. Gonk, sorry.
Forrest Gonk.
Forrest Gunk. My mama told me life is like an extension cord.
Oh, God. Anyway,
Sorry.
number 2.
Yeah.
This is a bit more familiar, but it's Max Rebo. And Max Rebo was the blue alien elephant leader of the space band called, wait for it, the Jizz Whalers. So we see him in Jabba's palace of weirdos, and we love him but yeah, he's a keyboard wizard. He's kind of like, I don't know, some weird psychedelic geezer, and you know, he is a blue elephant, but basically with very stumpy legs. He actually doesn't have legs. He kind of like has, I think he walks on his hands. There's some interpretations of him. There was a big issue with his toy release because they gave him legs, but actually his thing that he sits on, which is like a big round, like a cushion with the keys of the piano going all the way around so he can swivel. Basically, that on top of that, he's not through it. So he hasn't got legs in the conventional way. He uses his arms, his legs. He's got little paddles. So he's like a little stumpy fella. And so the toys aren't accurate. So just to give you a little bit of backstory on that. But this would be...
I'm going to go upstairs now and just rip the legs off mine.
But this would be kind of like a music kind of... I don't know whether it would be fly on the wall documentary, but it would be like a bit like Walk the Line or TikTok. So it looked like Kurt Cobain one that we've seen recently. So it'd be his like either rags to riches or riches to rags, because I don't know whether him getting a gig on the barge boat with Jabba the Hutt is kind of like the riches. You know, he's making money off Jabba. He's a big deal. He's a big warlord or gangster. Or would it be the other way around, where he starts off doing these shitty little gigs at Jabba's palace and he eventually gets spotted by a talent agent and goes sky high into like, you know, Coruscant, playing the big venues a bit like Vegas, and gets a residency somewhere with his band, the Jizz Whalers. But he might have a bit of an addiction to something, snorting things up his little blue trunk, you know, wading around drunk and gets pulled up by, you know, his mates in the band, and then turns himself around, maybe with the help of a woman or another, you know, alien. Yes, it might be a bit like A Star Is Born, where he helps the young singer or something. And
well,
then
you could have it like Almost Famous, where you had like a witness in the band following it for like Rockstar magazine or whatever it would be.
Yes,
in the future, that'd be cool.
That would work, actually. That would work. So that's my number 2, Max Rebo and the Jizz Whalers. And so this leads me to number 1. And this one is a big, clunking, obvious one. So apologies, but I'm sorry, but I'm not sorry, because this character is one of my just favorite characters, not just in Star Wars, but of all time. I want to be this person, this character. I look up to this person, literally. It's Chewbacca.
Oh, right. Okay. Yeah.
You seem underwhelmed.
Oh, no, it's just that the way he's building up, I thought, it's going to be Boba Fett. It's going to be Boba Fett.
No, Boba Fett was nearly there, but I thought that's too obvious. I can't go Boba Fett.
And he's kind of had his moment of exposition, hasn't he, really? Like, yeah. Because they kind of alluded to how he was, you know, created in the Clone Wars, etc. But Chewie, okay, cool.
Well, listen, Chewie's got so much potential, because what he does on screen with just very little, his manners, he's just like a massive dog, isn't he? He's just playful, he's honourable, he's got honour, he's a good psychic, he's a good friend, he's badass at fighting, he's a good shot, he's a good technician, he's everything. He can do
everything, yeah.
He's an old geezer as well. He's been around for 300 years or whatever.
And he's got a lovely family.
Because as we know, this is what I'm thinking. So he's got a lovely family with, as we know, with Lumpy and Itchy and the other one, Marla. And
Hervey.
So, yeah, so there's loads we could do. I don't know whether we would. We'd have to go to Kashek at some point. Whether there would be like a porn hub station for him, I don't know. Maybe you just pop home.
I mean, I would watch this just to try and get an idea of what that fucking thing is that the grandpa wears that Christmas morning. Or whatever. No, not for Christmas. What was it? Festival.
Happy Life Day.
Happy Life Day. That was it. Yeah. So how could I fucking forget? It burned into my retina hole.
But maybe, you know, in Solo we see how he was we see Solo and him meet for the first time in that like
he's all chained up and shit. We don't know how he got there.
How did he get there? And it's a bit of a change from, I think, the canon, or what was canon in the books, is that he was rescued by Han Solo from Bosk, and who was one of those bounty hunter lizard guys, and their race basically enslaved the Wookiees, and that's how that relationship developed, or the Wookiee life debt was created, not this kind of meeting in this muddy prison cell. But anyway, we could either do a bit more of a backstory on that kind of in slavery thing, or we could just go with the fact that how did he get captured by the Empire and stuck in the ditch. But yeah, I mean,
you could keep that as canon. So he could have escaped from the Bosk at some point, and like going home, and then got picked up again by the Empire on his way back, and then that would then segue into fucking hell. I'm just trying to get home, you asshole.
So there you go. That's number.
It's nearly Life Day for God's sake.
That's number 1.
Brilliant. I knew that would be good.
I really enjoyed doing it, and
down, Chris. There was some, there were some left field choices there.
Yeah.
And obviously, like you say, a proper store that everyone could really relate to. But yeah, no, enjoyed that. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Good fitting last top 5.
I don't know about you, but I'm thirsty as fuck.
What's our next feature then? Are we going to announce the next feature?
Well, our next feature is quite exciting because it could lead to many things or nothing at all. And that's the beauty of it. So our next feature is, because a lot of these, I find a lot of these talks that we have kind of revolve around us sort of brainstorming and ended up coming up with like a either better concept for an already existing film, or is what you've just done great concepts for films that you've done. So our new featurette will be one of us. When I say us, I'm talking about me and Chris, not you. You don't have to get up. You're fine where you are. Pitching to the other guy. So we're gonna in the interim period between them, think of a film that we'd like to see made, like completely original. Well, fuck it, we could probably do sequels and stuff if we wanted to, if we're feeling so creatively challenged. But yeah, so the format will be a pitch, at which point there will be the usual rebuke, mockery, and downright slamming of the ridiculous ideas of why this was never made into a film and why we shouldn't make it into a film. And then maybe we might make one of these at some point into either a radio podcast or film it. Who knows?
Yeah, we get a winner at the end of it, in 2020, and we can physically make it however we like.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, right. Sounds good. Sounds good. So the pitch, we'll call it the pitch because it's got a really cool, groovy name, and it's ripe for
the pitch.
And I think I should get a jingle for this one nice and early.
Yeah.
I think with the top 5s as well, we're going to release a little best of collection of the top 5 so that you can sit and listen to those to your heart content, because there was some good stuff in the
little
top
compilation.
Yeah. We don't, because we need the downloads basically. So yes, great idea for a future segment for the podcast. I hope you keep listening. Thanks again to Helen O'Hara for coming on the in the bunker again, and we've got some more special guests coming up this month, or the next couple of months at least. And if you like what you hear, don't forget to leave us a 5-star review and write a few words. It goes a long way. Like and subscribe on the old apps and on social media. Get involved as well, because we love to hear from you.
Love to hear from you.
I guess next review is a film, or the next podcast is a film, which we haven't decided yet, but stay tuned and we'll release that as soon as we can, isn't it?
It is a film, the next one. Definitely a film.
So thanks, Matt.
Stay tuned for the odd pop-in. Who knew these things existed?
That's right. See you later, Matt.
Bye.
Bye.